Hi, and welcome to this pre-recorded session for Avaus Expert Talks 2023. I have Leila Moitahedi here with me from KONE. Warmly welcome.
Thank you. Very happy to be
here. Super to have you. So today we're going to talk about a topic that we both got really excited about. And it's a special word also with some special meaning for you and for the KONE organization. And that word is courage. And your claim is that courage is the secret ingredient to becoming data-driven. So why don't you start by telling a bit more about yourself and your background and your role at KONE, and maybe a few words about KONE for those who are not familiar, and then we can dive into the topic of courage.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Emma, for having me and sharing this this topic together. That it's like you said, it's very exciting, and I absolutely believe that courage is the secret ingredient to becoming truly data-driven in any company's journey. So yes, I'm Leila Moitahedi. I'm the head of customer marketing and channels at KONE's Global Marketing and Communications organization. So KONE, for those who might not be familiar with it, is a leading company in the people flow industry. So we're a global leader in creating solutions for getting people from one place to another, and specifically with our different solutions, our equipment, our elevators and escalators, and then also our services around that ecosystem. And me personally, well, I have worked in a lot of different industries. I have been predominantly a champion of all things digital strategies, ecosystems, services. And a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity at KONE then to join the Global Marketing Communications organization. I've been with KONE for 6 years, previously in global IT, responsible for the externally exposed digital channels. And then I moved to the marketing communications organizations and absolutely fell in love with the whole marketing side from a more holistic perspective. So both the offline and online, and how it relates perhaps very strongly to this topic at hand is specifically that we decided 2 years ago when we started our transformation journey in marketing communications to take one of the key drivers to be becoming data-driven and becoming more evidence-based in what we're doing. So it's a very, very passion topic for us.
I have to ask, stepping in from more like the technical IT role and then coming into marketing and then saying that you absolutely love it. What is it about marketing that you absolutely love?
My passion has always, throughout my entire career, has been in creating holistic and consistent experiences for customers that delight them, for lack of a better word, that just makes them feel, whether it's negative that they have to take care of, well, with a service provider, or even if it's something, just a basic question, but so that experience that they have with that company, that it just leaves them like really happy that how easy that was. And so that can be tackled from any which direction. Basically, everybody's part of the digital realm. With marketing, that's what marketing is all about. It's about being relevant to the customers, providing them with everything that they need to know that they're in safe hands, and that whoever they're dealing with, in this case KONE, that understands their needs, and that the whole journey, from the creating awareness that they first hear about us to the point that they sign a deal, and from there onwards, it's just as easy as possible, and they feel that they're understood. And with bringing data into that, where you can actually bring facts and evidence that are you actually achieving that, and how can you not love that?
Well, I would definitely agree, but I think that's such an interesting take on marketing as well in a B2B sort of manufacturing setting. I'm not sure if everybody would share that view, perhaps, of what marketing's role is or marketing's potential. And I guess that's like the perfect bridge to the topic of courage, I guess.
Yes,
Why do you think courage is needed?
Well, we all know that the markets are changing. We know that the customer expectations are changing, and they're changing faster than before. Every single day, each company has the people in the company, the people leading companies need to make a choice that do you stay with what's safe and sound, because that's always worked up until now, or do you take that leap of faith and look constantly into new realms to find the opportunities where to like go to next. And leaps of faith take courage. It's taking a step into the unknown. But if you have the foundation for it, if you have the right culture for it, if you have that curiosity and you have the structure with enough data and facts to help you take at least the right direction, and you have a culture of testing and learning as quickly as possible so that you can maneuver yourself, then everything boils down to just having the courage to go into that unknown realm and find out what happens next, and through that keeping the company alive tomorrow, the day after, and into the future as well.
And for a company with such a sort of long history of decades of success, does that require even more courage? Is there more to overcome?
I would say that KONE is 113 years old. If you look 113 years back in human history, it's, especially in Europe, there's quite a lot that has happened during that time. So, of course, it takes resilience. It takes a very strong core DNA, but it does take courage. It takes that courage to constantly look how to reinvent yourself without losing the core competences and who you are at your very DNA level, but constantly figuring out how to transform. So it does take courage, and there's a lot of industries that perhaps haven't been pushed that hard. The B2B world is certainly not pushed as hard as the B2C world in that reinventing themselves. But therefore, I would say it actually takes a bit more courage in the B2B world to take that courageous step into reinventing when you might not have the same sense of urgency as you would, for instance, in the consumer industry.
And now I get the feeling that you're talking about sort of on an organizational level. What about the personal level? Why do you need courage on a personal level? I mean, if nobody is demanding from you that you take these leaps of faith, do you still should you still do it, or?
Absolutely. It's organizations. Yes, it's easy to talk about companies, and I too fall into that chat that talk about companies. But what are companies at the end of the day? They're a group of people that are working hard to achieve the same ambition. And if we talk about transformation, if we talk about reinventing yourself, it requires courage from everyone. It's always easy to just stay with what's safe and sound, that this is the process that we've had. This has worked up until now. But whether it's on the overall company level or on a team level or an individual level, it does take courage to constantly look for those new opportunities. That how do you provide more value to the company? How do you do things more efficiently? How do you constantly reinvent the function or the domain or your expertise? So it's a continuous journey on all different levels. And whether it's a little step forward or a major transformation, it always takes courage from the people themselves and trust in each other that we're on the same journey.
Isn't that also sort of personal? You are clearly a courageous person. What is then courage? Is that sort of, might your courage be different than somebody else's courage? And how can you sort of foster that? You can't ask the same things of everyone, but rather, I guess it's a cultural thing that you want to. How would you know if somebody's being courageous, basically? How can you tell?
I would say that it's those little leaps of faith. So it's, first of all, it does take a lot from leadership. there has to be that psychological safety in the working environment, that people feel comfortable to take, whether it's a little step, because a little step for, let's say, me, could be a big step for another person. And it's very important that you recognize that everybody has the space that they need, everybody has the support that they need, and they feel that they're in a safe environment to test new things. That even if you have a hypothesis and you test it, even if it doesn't work out, that's a learning in itself, and it's fine to not always succeed at everything. In fact, sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the failures, as long as you have an environment that allows people to test things and know that they're not going to get into trouble because they tested something, and then they can learn from that. So that you create that a sort of hive mind of growth mindset, and everybody feels comfortable as they are. There are, I've had in my teams very process-oriented people that like the process. This is how we've done. Let's make this more efficient, and encouraging them to also think that how could this be looked at from an entirely different perspective? How can you look at a different lens? So it does require a lot of perseverance. It requires being there for the people as they are themselves, and making sure that they know that it's okay. Just try something out. Take that little step if you're not comfortable in taking a bigger step. But just have a hypothesis, test it, learn, and continuously improve upon that.
So what could be good examples of courageous behavior, I guess, when it comes to sort of the journey towards becoming data-driven?
Well, I would say that being perhaps honest and very open to start off with. So quite often people might be resistant to starting to build that data journey, because data can be in itself like scary, in the sense that if it brings a lot of visibility, and it might bring visibility into things that people would rather not know. So that
what might be such a thing?
Well, let's say from a marketing perspective, hypothetically, that you have put a lot of money into a campaign, a very creative campaign. Everybody loves the campaign. It has been like gotten rave reviews, but did it actually generate value? So that's often a question that it takes courage to ask, and it takes courage to actually find out, because creative people fall in love very easily with the creative side. And the thing about data is that if you put another perspective to that data actually gives you the freedom of creativity. It allows to be as creative as you want, not falling in love with one specific creative campaign or asset as such, but starting off with that, seeing, did it work? If it didn't, why didn't it work? And then building upon that, how can you adjust it? How can you try something different? So, but that starting point of finding out that did it work, that people might easily feel that it will reflect badly on them if it didn't work. But then again, what if it did work? And what did it work? What can you learn from that? So creating that environment where it's okay to find out. You won't get in trouble because data will set you free.
Data will set you free. That sounds almost like a religion of sorts. What about? I mean, in an old manufacturing company like yours, and I've been working with the likes for more than 10 years, and one of the things which is often, I believe, very demands a lot of courage is sort of standing up for the role of marketing and the role of what could be done, and or fighting the internal windmills who sort of, I don't know, it could be politics, it could be silos, it could be anything, budgeting processes, or just, too many meetings, or whatever it might be in your daily lives. Do you have any like good examples of this is one time when we were, courageously, I don't know, prioritizing or courageously solving problems or addressing problems?
So another aspect perhaps to this data religion or faith is that data gives you power. And that's why data is so important to marketing, because very often marketing is seen as that creative, fluffy side of things, whereas data will prove how absolutely hard rock value marketing can provide. It will give you solid arguments that will help you when you go into those budget discussions, when you go and show that how much easier it was for a salesperson to get that signature on the contract because of all the work that was done before that led up to that single point. That when you find all of this data, when you compile it in a way that nobody can counter that will give you power that can establish, even against the strongest windmills, that this is what marketing can achieve, and this is what marketing will achieve. And sometimes it just takes taking those little steps to test the hypothesis on a smaller level, taking that example and building it from the very get-go with very rock-solid metrics that resonate with your audience. So that's often something as well that we very easily utilize the same metrics that we've always used, especially in the digital world with leads and forms filled and such. But translating that into language that then the windmills talk, which is usually then probably more business like hard numbers, just translating into that will give you the power to have like a very solid argument and a very hard discussion for the windmill.
But isn't that, yeah, I guess many don't do that because they just don't know how to do that. So I guess courage is also learning or struggling. I guess nobody wants to do stuff that you suck at. You want to do things that you're good at and that you've done many times.
And that's very true. And the power of also data is that it will allow you to get to that, being constantly better and faster. So perhaps a third paradigm to the data religion or faith is
they're creating like the three rules of the data religion.
Data gives you wisdom. So in a sense that it provides you insights with more that are more than just knowledge of what works. It gives you wisdom as to what out of all of these parameters, what's the right mix? How do you continuously become smarter and better at what you do? You can become so good only so far if you're basically constantly just working with one hand and one hand's tied behind your back. But data will provide you with both hands to like steer the wheel. And now I'm mixing metaphors.
It was a great metaphor, I think, with the one hand tied behind the back.
Yes.
So when then thinking about all of that courage, I'm sort of seeking like how can I tell that I'm being courageous? Is it sort of is it like a feeling that I have? Is it sort of vulnerability? Is it sort of not? So I guess also when we're learning new things and we are being courageous, we're not saying that. I mean, courage is saying that I'm not perfect yet. I'm taking steps, but I'm not perfect yet, I guess.
Yes, it's about being honest and open. It's about being pragmatic. You can be as ambitious as you want, but you have to understand what your starting point is. And usually the best test to are you being courageous or not is, are you scared? If you have that sense of stress or fear that I don't really know what I'm doing, but I absolutely believe that this is the right thing to do, then just building that hypothesis. If you're constantly on that, like slightly out of your comfort zone, that's when you know that you're being courageous.
Oh, that's a great sort of feeling to be looking for.
Yes.
How would you sort of then, there might be different levels of people listening to this. How would like a let's say a C-level leader versus a, I don't know, team lead or function lead, or maybe like a practitioner? What would those different courageous acts be? Or I mean, what should make you feel that, not scared perhaps, but at least being outside of your comfort zone?
Well, if thinking of the C-level, that I would say that it's daring to look into the unknown, setting very clear direction, setting very clear goals that you really stick to, and that they need to be ambitious enough. They need to be like, you'll get only so amount of data and guidance from your partners, but you need to set an example, and you need to also have the courage to demand the right type of input from your organization, from the people that you work with. That it's very easy to stick to just the same old metrics, but when you start moving into the unknown, when you start moving into transforming into something new, then you need to also think about the metrics that you need to understand how well you are actually performing, and dare to demand that from the people who you're working with and who are part of your journey, and leading them through that as well, creating that understanding of, in this brave new world, what do we actually mean by value, and how do we measure our performance? Then more for team leads or just leaders in general, it's about perseverance. It's about like carrying through even the ups and downs, the windmills, and just setting the stage for the people that are working with you to feel safe in that environment, to know that you'll have their back, and that there is that empowerment to test and learn. And then for the practitioners themselves, just do it. Start with just start with something, even if the ambition is like to aim for the stars. Like, try and get off Earth first and aim for the moon. That start with the small steps and just learn little by little, and just be as curious as you can. Even things that might seem mundane today, but when you start thinking about how the dots connect actually, and what you did at this point as opposed to something else that you could have done, how did that actually impact the overall journey? And just start testing and learning, and be brave in trying new things, trying new metrics, trying new digging more data, trying new technologies and capabilities as they become available. The world is changing and evolving so fast that there's constantly new technologies that can be tested that might bring something new to the big picture. And it's worth just testing. You can always learn from a test, even if you don't continue with it in the long run. And that will give you more wisdom as to how to move forward from there onwards.
I really like that notion that sort of testing is learning. And even if the test fails, you have still learned something. And I guess, I've been working a lot with upskilling lately, and this one Swedish professional kind of management literature guy, he said that research shows that we are spending 10 to 15 times too little time upskilling ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think all of this upskilling, quite easily we think that means that we need to sort of study stuff, or sit and listen to lectures or YouTube videos or whatever. But at this, applying this test and learn mentality and being courageous around that, I guess that's even more valuable than passively receiving information.
Yeah, I think studies have also probably shown, at least as far as I can remember, I can't quote anything directly, but that you learn most effectively when you actually do. And about this upskilling, it's also about utilizing the opportunities as they come along. As an example of that, at the Avos Expert Talks last autumn, you guys had a guest speaker there talking about quantum computing and how Finland had just launched its first quantum computer, which I think was second in the world, maybe. So just sitting there listening to this new technology that nobody really knows what it will make possible one day. But there's a small group of very courageous people out there that are both building these new capabilities without perhaps even knowing where it's going to end up. But also, I have to say, a lot of very, very brave people funding this. And therefore, you need also courageous people to just test out what can it achieve. Even in the baby steps, there's so much that can be learned. So from that speech, we actually contacted that person, that speaker, and proposed that, how about we make a marketing use case as one of the first use cases for the Finnish quantum computer? It's in such early stages that in itself, it probably won't bring a whole lot of value. It's more about helping the quantum computer build the algorithms with which it will then become better and more efficient and whatever it will become. But just the idea of, why not marketing? Why does it always have to be, finance or, the stock market?
Absolutely. And I mean, now with all of this AI development, like marketing and sales use cases are the best area to experiment, because if you succeed, there's like a direct impact. And if it fails, half of marketing is bad, but we just don't know what part. So in this case, we would know what part didn't work. So it's like risk-free. And I love that, that marketing can be one of these trailblazers, but we need courageous people. And I think this quantum computing pilot in the domain of marketing is just maybe one of the most inspiring things that I've taken part of in the last 12 months. Can you tell us anything more about what exactly the use case is, or how is this being planned?
So we've had several discussions with different parties, and very happy to have Avaus help working with us on that as well. That bring that the very hardcore data analytics skills and mindset that we appreciate in general as to have from a partner that then fulfills the areas that we need fulfilled with. But so we have been discussing with the different parties a few different use cases. It's interesting how you have to find a good balance, that it needs to be complex enough from the data modeling and the data sources perspective, but the algorithm in itself needs to be relatively simple, because the level of sophistication isn't quite there yet. So there's been a lot of discussions around that, and we have a couple of use cases. It's more about predictive modeling that we've been discussing, and how to utilize external data to then build much more sophisticated models than what we can when in this sort of traditional computer world. So at the moment, we're discussing with all the different parties involved how we're going to actually build this algorithm and the implementation side of things. So it is super exciting. If anything, it is a step into the unknown, but at the same time, and I can promise you, the amount of windmills, I've wondered that out of all the things that you could have done with quantum computing, are you kidding me, on a marketing use case? But as you said, why not? That is the area, if any, where you can just test different things and try. So it's very exciting. And no one really knows what's going to come out of it. But if nothing else, everybody who has been involved with it will be upskilled definitely on the power of quantum computing.
And inspired to be as courageous as you and your team. So I think that's really kind of setting the standard for thinking openly about what can be done and stepping out of your comfort zone. I cannot say that I would feel very confident or comfortable with quantum computing just yet. So that's absolutely inspiring.
I had a discussion with my team. We have, of course, a big team, and we're discussing this, that we've had these like thinkings around quantum computing, and everybody was nodding. And then I asked that, do you know what quantum computing is? And everybody was like, no. And I thought that was in itself, it was, anybody could have quickly Googled on Wikipedia that what is quantum computing and said that, yes, let me read it from here. But they were all so fascinated. They were all so curious. And they immediately jumped on the opportunity to learn more about this. Rather than just saying, yes, I'm reading it from Wikipedia, they all wanted to know more. They wanted to know that, what is this new technology? What is this new area? And like, how can we perhaps use it in the future? And so it's one of the aspects I'm very proud of the team, that they have this inherent curiosity to know more.
Well, that's so inspiring to hear, and I think a lot of people would be very impressed and also inspired by the courageous work by your team. Before we end here, I have one last question, which is a good one to always end with. So, if you would go back to the start, or maybe a few years, what would you do differently in terms of inspiring and leading your team towards data-drivenness? Any tips or anything that you could help anybody else do better or avoid mistakes in the future?
So when we started our journey specifically in marketing 2 years ago, we started out by building a measurement framework and setting that if we want to be really good at acquisition, engagement, and retention, then how do you actually measure that? And if I could go back in 2 years and tell myself that make your life a bit easier, don't start out with a heavy-duty framework. So the thinking was good. The intentions were good. We wanted to provide a structure. This is an easy way to start getting into data. But data in itself, metrics in themselves, they don't provide value. It's data literacy that provides value. So I would go back and give myself advice that start sparking that curiosity, that start helping people understand that data isn't scary, data will set you free. Then just be curious and start with the little steps. Start with this metric, then build it with this metric, and start building the how it fits into the overall journey. We did eventually get to that point, but it was after we realized that we had built a framework and everybody's like, sure, numbers. So we could have saved ourselves time and effort if we'd started off with the mindset shift, instead of bringing that framework to people who hadn't bought into the idea of the data journey yet.
And if you would share one thing that you are looking forward to in the next 12 or 24 months, what is that? If we would have this discussion a year from now or 2 years from now, are you going to be all set on quantum computing, or what's the sort of?
I would love to say yes, but I think that quantum computing has a way to go still. But I would say that, so our journey has been, we started from being data aware, that we knew that data was needed, but we have the capabilities to understand the data or get the data. And I would say that at this point we are data-led, that we're very strongly data-led, and data and analyzing it and understanding it has been built in. I am super excited about the next journey, because that's about becoming truly data-driven, that it is embedded into everything that we do, and that we can very quickly take actions based on whatever we learn at that given moment, that we speed up our pace of learning, and that we can constantly, instead of reacting to how our target audiences behave based on what we've done, we can actually start predicting what they will do, building those models, and start testing much more sophisticated hypotheses on a larger scale than we're doing now. So once we get that built, then it's going to be in very, very exciting times to see that how we can then really make a massive impact on even the kind of business, like the bottom line.
Fantastic. Well, best of luck with that. And thank you so much for taking the time to speak about courage. I hope to see you soon again.
Thank you for having me. I love this discussion and very happy to always talk more about it.